Hello, and welcome back to Mystic Motivation, a podcast for witchy women. Today, I want to talk about one of my favorite healing modalities that I just think is so perfect for witchy women who are looking to empower themselves on their witchcraft journey. I think this aspect of my journey created the biggest shifts. And so I wanted to share some of my journey of working with archetypes as a means to heal. So, this is kind of a mix of archetypal work and persona crafting, which is perfect for witches, for women, because being a witch, being a woman, we're foundationally creative in two ways. As a woman, by nature, as a womb holders, we have this deep encoding of being cyclical, being a reflection of the divine, and how everything is in this kind of rhythmic pattern of repetition, of cycles of birth and rebirth, of creation, and we hold that deeply within ourselves. Just a brief example, and this applies for even those who might not have a menstrual cycle anymore. Again, it's just in our encoding as womb holders, but the patterns of our cycles and how they relate to archetypes. So, just kind of a preface of what I'm talking about here. When we start our menstrual cycle, we're in our crone archetype. It's more archetype that's introspective, intuitive, and wise. After we move out of our menstrual cycle, we go into our follicular phase. We start to gain momentum in our energy. This is the maiden archetype, is that more refreshed, adventurous, youthful energy. From there, we transition into our ovulatory phase. This is associated with the mother archetype because it's our most balanced selves. We can handle more things at this time. And then we move out of our ovulatory into our luteal, which is our wild woman archetype. This is really the week and a half to not give a shit about anything, do what you want, go to the beat of your own drum, and if you can, run in the woods and howl at the moon. So these archetypes, we kind of look at as external, and we're going to talk about how we can begin to work with them internally. But getting back to my point, we are creative in two foundational ways as witchy women, because as witches, the baseline, kind of a really simplified description of witchcraft would be symbolism, alchemy, and crafting. Very simplified, right? But it's true. It's so the foundation of us witches is this deep creativity. And so that's why I love this healing modality and I want to talk in depth about it. So, as I was talking about before, commonly when we mention archetypes, it's usually associated with some sort of lore around witches, women, or goddesses, or it's like associated with deities directly. What's different about this kind of persona crafting is that it's working with archetypes, but within yourself. It's literally starting to create an encapsulated version of the different versions of yourself. So, for example, creating different versions of me that are authentic to me. So, you literally getting out a piece of paper and saying, like, okay, I want to work on being a better public speaker. So I am going to really start to personify a version of myself that is true, right? My most confident self, and like associate things with her. So maybe I always dress a certain way in my most confident self. Maybe she always wears lipstick. Maybe she always wears a specific piece of jewelry. Maybe she really loves a certain drink, and drinking that drink kind of evokes that version of myself. I'm like calling upon her. Maybe she likes a certain type of music, so I put that playlist on. It's working with aspects of yourself that are true to get to a specific outcome that you can begin to embody to help you with something you're trying to heal, right? And heal being like a broad word for something you're trying to overcome, something you're trying to attract, something you're trying to work with. And it's also fun. Healing in this way is no longer intense, or right, we have to balance things, of course, but when we want to kind of work with something that's not as maybe as big of a stressor, we can apply this as a means to enjoy the progression of trying to work towards a goal, right? Trying to work towards more confidence, a level up in your career, to be recognized for a certain thing or in a certain way. It becomes fun to actually sit down and map out a version of yourself that you can evoke, dress like, embody as you build it up, as you get familiar with it, as you work with that aspect of yourself, it becomes natural to switch into. And right, we're not creating anything that's not true to ourselves. It's highlighting, it's amplifying versions of ourselves and really niching it into a persona that benefits us. It really places the power back into you, because I think just as society is, we have so much like programming of constantly seeking external guidance for things. And I think there's nuance and balance to every conversation, but that needs to be balanced in order to come to true inner empowerment, right? There's aspects of your journey, for example, where you may need a teacher for a certain thing, or if we're getting more serious on the topic, that you may need a therapist or just some sort of help to get through something. But this modality of healing is good for when we're just trying to amplify or work with something that we know we have the capability to do, but we just may be more scattered in our approach. And this is important for women because so many of us have not been taught at a young age. Maybe we're just now finding out or just starting to investigate, like how we're very cyclical, how we're not one way, shape, or form, how we very much reflect nature in its changing seasons, how we very much represent just the nature at whole for the deaths and rebirths. Like I was talking about before, not only does our menstrual cycle, for those of us who have one, represent the different archetypes, but it represents the seasons. The crone menstrual cycle is winter. How do we act during winter? It's important to embrace those facets of ourselves. We think of our luteal phase, how it's associated with the wild woman archetype. That's autumn, how things naturally shed during that time. We think of our maiden archetype, that's our follicular phase, that represents spring. How are we, still childlike at heart? How are we still adventurous? Our youthful aspects of ourselves. And then, our ovulatory phase, the mother archetype, that's the summer. So we're kind of at our peak selves for taking action. So my best recommendation for starting to work with archetypes and persona crafting is to follow those four archetypes at first, right? Start to list down traits that relate to those kind of basic archetypes. How are you the maiden? For example, for me, when I'm feeling childlike, I like to go back to the things I like to do as a child. I really like to play video games as a child, so maybe I'll do that as a form of self-care or a way to kind of evoke that youthful younger self. Or I was kind of the jokester as a kid. I was voted class clown. Yep, it's one of my biggest flexes. But as a way to connect with my inner child, maybe I'll watch a comedy, or I'll just kind of horse around and be super silly with someone I'm hanging out with. Just go back to that kind of more adventurous, playful persona as a means to unlock that version of myself. And we don't have to necessarily take that route if you instead want to apply more like, okay, let me get creative, and instead, like, maybe it's just this more youthful maiden like version of myself likes to wear floral. Maybe she always wears flowers, or she always wears a specific perfume, or a certain playlist, creating a playlist for these archetypes to evoke that energy, however it relates to you. And the same thing, going to the complete opposite of the scale, doing this for each archetype. But for example, the crone, this is a more moody archetype. So you start to picture, okay, how am I when I'm more introspective, when I really feel hermited? How am I when I'm on my menstrual cycle, if you do have one? How am I when I want to just retreat? Or what do I picture my intuitive self like? What do I tend to do when I'm in those moods? You get really specific. Maybe I wear more of a winter or autumn color palette when I'm connecting with the crone. And maybe my crone is really good at being intuitive, or was really good at divination. And so as you give these characteristics, you can start applying when they would be necessary. I need my maiden when I'm trying to go out, be social, and maybe strike up a conversation that could benefit my career. I need to evoke the crone aspect of myself when maybe I don't know, just an example that relates to me, but like when I'm going to an event and I'm reading divination, I'll evoke the crone to be more present, to slow down. I'm usually kind of can be sometimes more high energy. And so just as a way to calm down and like really be present, really zone in, really kind of get like serious and like in tune with just who I'm talking to, evoking that. And I evoke her through the playlist, the scent, the clothes, the associations. It becomes easier to enter that aspect of yourself rather than just going through your journey, kind of like feeling what card am I thinking of in tarot? Is it the 7 of cups? That's the um all the cups in the air with the fog. Um, it's like picturing that where you don't really know like a good plan for whatever you're trying to strive towards, confidence, more beauty, more success, healing something. You instead have this internal authority to turn into that can guide you. It is just a powerful way to reclaim your power, to be more sovereign in your journey, and to balance being a woman and being a witch, just being creative at your core. It's symbolism, it's crafting, it's getting to know yourself to a very deep level. And for those of you who may have a cycle, it's also a great way to work with your cycle. If you want to be more cyclical and embodying these archetypes, you could literally shift or try to work with these archetypes each week when you are in a different phase of your menstrual cycle and you want to honor that energy more, or as we're in the seasons, right? So as we're in winter, throughout the whole winter months, you're calling upon the crone. Maybe you create a crone altar for yourself, working with yourself. You embrace more of your crone's color palettes, or you're doing more practices within those months that relate to the crone, and you shift in that way. So it's creative because you can apply this to your practice however it makes sense for you. But it is true, in my journey, working with archetypes in this way really changed a lot of things for me. It really changed a lot of stuff that was more difficult for me to work over, whether it was within my internal self or it was something external outside of me that I was trying to alchemize with. Working with archetypes really changed my confidence. It really changed the way I saw my craft. It really changed the way I saw my ability to work with magic and to alchemize energy. And so I hope that something I said here in this simple run over of archetypes and persona crafting, that you found something that resonates and something you're kind of curious to dive into. As usual, which is thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please give a like and a comment, letting me know what you think, how maybe you already work with creative persona crafting or the archetypes. Let me know your ideas, the way you work with the archetypes. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Mystic Motivation on YouTube and Spotify, and I'll see you back here soon. Much love.